Nathan?
I had a little trouble with the fireplace. Okay. I think I'm ready to go. What's on the docket?
Hunchback of Notre Dame.
I am not falling for that again.
No. It's the Disney one this time, I promise. We're still on Stephen Schwartz.
Oh, okay.
Welcome back to Faith on Film, where we church library and search for the good stuff. I'm Stephanie.
And I like this one.
He's Nathan.
In 1991, a masterpiece debuted that would be beloved by people for generations. It was me.
Nathan.
And I guess some movie called The Beauty and the Beast came out. It was only the first animated movie ever nominated for Best Picture. This got the film a lot of attention, and the Disney studio was eager to replicate that success. Unfortunately, the Oscar bait they put out got middling results and mixed reviews.
Naturally, this meant that the movie that was coming next down the pipeline got a late-in-the-game makeover to make it more fun and lighthearted and family-friendly. Because that's what Pocahontas' problem was. It was too serious.
So what fairy tale were they adapting this time?
A brick of a French novel about a church official who abuses his power over lust for a woman? Oh, and architecture. Lots and lots of architecture.
We could spend all day on the movie as an adaptation of the book, but really, I'm just going to recommend you go see Lindsay Ellis's video on the subject, because she does a much better job than we could. We are moving on.
Oh boy.
Let's get down to business!
Nathan? No.
Was that not right?
No.
Our protagonist, the titular hunchback, is raised by an overbearing Catholic man who constantly tells him he's made wrong. That the world is a dark, cruel place where only a select few devout people exist. And he weaponizes forgiveness to make Quasimodo dependent on him. There's a word for that.
Child abuse?
There are two words for that. I was going for an extreme version of Catholic guilt. There's a thought regarding Catholics that they are excellent at elevating God up into the holy and lowering mankind and deeming them unworthy due to their numerous sins. This has a tendency to produce people who constantly feel guilty about whatever they do. This, as you may imagine, is not healthy.
Here's the thing, though. I don't get why this is exclusively a Catholic thing. In my experience, Protestants are just as bad. I know in my Pentecostal high school, I got way more lectures about hellfire than I ever did in my Catholic junior high school. Long story.
As for me, it was always considered a win in my church if some kid broke down crying, worrying that they were going to hell, because it meant we were that much closer to a new convert. And as you might guess from the name, Evangelical Christianity, winning souls. Kind of a big deal. I also know that Protestants are really interested in justifying or rationalizing their own ideology as superior to that of others. So it wouldn't be surprising to me to find that the term Catholic guilt was coined by Protestants to say, no, we're doing Christianity right. We're not here to make you feel bad about yourself. Just up until the moment of conversion. Anything you feel after that must be Satan. It's not us.
We were talking about a movie, weren't we?
Right. Point I was getting at is that Quasimodo is an excellent example of a hyperbolized but still pretty plausible religious guilt complex. He bucks against the impositions laid on him by going to the Feast of Fools, but he grovels in submission and returns back home the moment something goes wrong. And when he meets a non-Christian Romani woman who is actually kind to him, he insists that she is not like the rest of her people, that they are lying, thieving vagabonds. She is one of the good ones. Speaking of which...
Yes, I can see you're very excited about this song.
I can see what's happening.
What?
They don't have a clue.
Who?
They'll fall in love, and here's the bottom line. All trios...
Get back on topic.
Aww. So this is Frollo.
Frollo is changed from being the Archdeacon, which he is in the book, to a hard-lined officer of the law with a black and white sense of morality, a viewpoint that has been shaped by his religion. Why does that sound familiar?
Not that this movie being similar to Hugo's other uber-famous work, Les Miserables, is a bad thing. Just something interesting to take note of. Frollo is 100% the reason this movie is faith unfilmable. He's a man who knows the exact right things to say to justify his bigotry using his religion. He's not racist. He just thinks the Romani are sinners who need to face judgment. He's not sexist. He just thinks women need to stop being so darn tempting. He's not a pervert. Esmeralda just twists the mind with unholy thoughts. And what's really interesting is that despite the fact that they changed him into a judge, the distinction was lost on many children, myself included, because he just looks like a priest. He's constantly wearing robes, he carries himself like a clergyman, and even his design includes the three-pointed hat as a reference to the Holy Trinity.
Which is ironic, because it was thought that children wouldn't necessarily understand why a priest would have this much power, because in modern times, the church really isn't the authority that it used to be. He is frightening, however, because the type of person that he represents is very real. The degree of power that these individuals have will vary,
but their societal influence is almost as, if not more, harmful. When hate is codified into people's faith, it makes it that much harder to fight against.
And it's rare to see that kind of social problem reflected by a Disney villain, Gaston notwithstanding.
What's the matter, beast? Too kind and gentle to fight back.
Frollo has also achieved a sort of notoriety within the Disney animated canon for being one of the more complex of their villains. Compare him to the likes of Maleficent. Calm down. I love Maleficent. She's fantastically evil. She's the mistress of it. There's a reason that she's the one they gave a Wicked knockoff to. She's not an especially deep character in the original text. Even other Renaissance-era villains suffer from kind of the same problem. You could read into Scar's backstory and make him more interesting. But at the end of the day, he feels no internal conflict about killing Mufasa. Frollo does. We're gonna have to talk about sex, aren't we?
You gave advice about oral in our care review. You'll be fine.
Okay! His most famous song is about his desire to bang Esmeralda, and how he feels like he's going against God himself for having that desire. You could even say he's a victim of his own ideology. That doesn't make him any less of a monster. He's just a monster of his own making. To quote director Gary Ross talking about his own movie, Pleasantville, personal repression gives rise to larger political oppression.
Like many other movies of the Disney Renaissance era, this film was also adapted to the Broadway stage. The key difference is it never actually made it to Broadway, so you will most likely never see it. Sorry. There were a few changes made to the character of Claude Frollo. Some were surface level, for example, he's a priest again. Some were a little deeper. So, in the book there was a brother named Jehan, who was a deadbeat drunk that Claude had to take care of and cover up for. The musical makes Quasimodo Jehan's son. His mother is still Romani. Oh, did we forget to mention that in the movie Frollo murdered Quasimodo's mother in the opening song? No? Well, we're going back to that anyway. On stage, Jehan and the unnamed mother die of a disease they caught living the hedonistic life. So Claude feels compelled to shield his nephew from that life. Overall, he's generally nicer through the first half of the show, too. For example, he's actually the one who offers Esmeralda counsel when she's trapped inside the cathedral under sanctuary. But over time, his underlying prejudices crop up, and his inability to reconcile them drives him to do the same heinous acts that he does in the movie.
This progression is closer to the book, and it has been argued that while animated Frollo is more complex than his peers, the stage show demonstrates that there was more room to make him more human. And thus, the animated version is not actually that complex because he's just hateful up front for no particular reason.
Right. But in your experience and in your reading of history, have people needed reasons to be hateful?
Okay, but you see, in real life, people aren't so obviously evil.
God has instilled the power of civil government to send the police in 2019 out to these LGBT freaks and arrest them and have a trial for them, and if they are convicted, then they are to be put to death.
Something happened a long time ago in Haiti. They got together and swore a pact to the devil. They said, "We will serve you if you'll get us free from the French." But ever since, they have been cursed by one thing after the other, desperately poor.
You can never whip these boys if you don't keep you and them separate. I found that out in Birmingham. You've got to keep the white and the black separate.
You want to marry a black man, you girls? Don't ask me to do it, because I will not. I refuse. I cannot do it with a conscience toward God and look these quotes in the face.
Never mind.
Happy things. Oh! Tony J once said in an interview that voicing Frollo was his bid for immortality, and so far that has proved to be true.
Not least of all, for hellfire.
Yes, I know you want to. Sing it.
Beata Maria!
You know what I find really interesting?
What?
Frollo is fervently praying to Mother Mary for deliverance from the temptation that is Esmeralda. And just as he's saying, "Don't let her fire sear my flesh and bone," a guard knocks on the door and tells him that Esmeralda has escaped. So, you could argue that God gave him an out. His prayer was answered. Remove Esmeralda from my life. Okay, done. He could just let her walk away and just go about his life like nothing happened. But he continues to press this to a point where she tempts him to evil thoughts by simply existing.
Frollo also uses his theology to dehumanize Esmeralda. She's a witch, a demon of hell. He views her, and indeed most of the world, as less deserving of basic human dignity than he is because they're less faithful. In fact, he views his persecution as merciful because it is less bad for them than damnation. Eternal damnation, even. Look, I'm not here to police what you believe about the afterlife. That's between you and your God. But I will say the people who talk the most about hell tend to be the most forceful, destructive people of their respective traditions.
Esmeralda's big solo is a song called God Help the Outcasts. She explicitly says that she's not really sure if she believes in God, and because of this, she's not really sure if she should even be talking to him. But her prayer is to see God's hand at work among the people who society has marginalized. While the good Christians around her pray for wealth and fame and for glory to shine on their name, the agnostic is the one demonstrating the most Christ-like attitude. Oh, and just in case you missed it, Frollo actually starts offering pieces of silver for anyone with information on Esmeralda's whereabouts. His self-awareness is at an all-time low.
Judas Iscariot went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me to betray him to you?" They paid him 30 pieces of silver.
In the climax of her song, she says, "I thought we all were the children of God." This is something Frollo has forgotten. He views only believers as the children of God.
I can see it both ways. Scripturally speaking, only those who believe are children of our Father who is in heaven. But even conservatively speaking, theologically, every man is made in the image of God, and is therefore worthy of dignity and respect. Hey, Nathan, wasn't this a musical?
You already interrupted me?
But we get to talk about Alan Menken.
Who's Alan Menken?
Simply put, Alan Menken is a Disney legend. Fun fact, he actually has more Academy Award wins to his name than John Williams, at 8. 4 for Best Original Song, and 4 for Best Original Score. You have heard Alan Menken's music, even if you don't realize it. This easily stands out as one of his best works.
And Stephen Schwartz is on as lyricist. One thing that we've noticed doing this review in it is that, well, first of all, he's on the top of his game. But, second of all, he likes to incorporate non-English languages into his songs. Pocahontas introduces the Powhatan village with traditional chanting. Prince of Egypt makes liberal use of Hebrew lyrics. And for Hunchback, they use quite a bit of Latin rather cleverly. Specifically, Catholic formulae. The background singing in The Bells of Notre Dame is the Dies Irae, which is about the coming day of wrath, but has also become musical shorthand for death. And when the Archdeacon is putting Frollo on blast, he says, "You never can run from, nor hide what you've done from the eyes of Notre Dame." Notre Dame is Latin for Our Lady, referring to the Virgin Mary. Frollo has just murdered a mother defending her child. The Archdeacon is challenging Frollo to treat Quasimodo as he would Christ. And Hellfire is juxtaposed with the Confiteor, a Latin confession of sin. Where this gets interesting is that Frollo is basically singing the opposite of everything the other people are saying at any given time. I have sinned versus I'm so much purer than the common, vulgar, weak, licentious crowds. I was wrong versus it's not my fault. Lord have mercy versus she will burn.
It's been observed many times that this movie could have been a masterpiece, but Disney tripped over itself with, well, let's be nice and call them total inconsistencies.
This reaches a head in the Gargoyles number called A Guy Like You. As we said at the top of the video, this was added late in the game, and it shows.
Does it ever?
But it's not just the fact that it's a silly song in a mostly serious movie. Now it's time for Silly Songs with Gargoyles, the part of the show where gargoyles come out and sing a silly song. That could hypothetically work.
Like Master of the House?
Why does it keep coming back to Les Mis?
It's so easy. No, the real problem is this song happens at the exact wrong time. Just when the dramatic tension is at its peak, the city is on fire. That's when we decide to sing a silly song that's easily the weakest of the movie.
We all have glanced at some Adonis. But since you're shaped like a croissant is... And why are the gargoyles suddenly able to pull anachronisms? They're not the genie. There was a sort of internal logic to his being able to do that, in that he's more or less outside of time. they don't have that advantage. This just makes no sense.
On a whole, the tonal switches are a problem, yes. But I think it's possible that this problem has been overblown maybe a little bit in the overall discourse of the movie. Yes, A Guy Like You is a bad song, and the gargoyles are kind of annoying, but they're not that much more annoying than some other Disney sidekicks.
Like who?
Mushu?
Point taken.
Also, Laverne wasn't that bad. It's mostly Jason Alexander that gets on your nerves. The real problem with the gargoyles, honestly, is their advice really sucks compared to some of their counterparts.
Tell her the truth.
You must control your temper!
Better to beg forgiveness than ask permission.
Have you met Frollo?
If Laverne's line, "We're only made of stone, we just thought maybe you were made of something stronger," was the last you saw of them, it'd make their role in the film that much better, because it would better communicate that they're what he relies on instead of company, and now he no longer needs them. But no, they're all over the climax, getting into wacky hijinks.
I also want to talk about the decision to split Frollo and the Archdeacon into two separate characters, because there's something I haven't really heard anybody talk about. The Archdeacon, on a whole, lets Frollo get away with a lot, doesn't he?
What are you talking about? He calls the wrath of God down on Frollo in the prologue. And later he says he will not abide an attack on the house of God.
Right, what was he doing in between those two scenes? Exactly. Frollo is terrorizing the city and keeping Quasimodo locked away in the tower, and the Archdeacon doesn't do anything about it. He saves Quasimodo's life in the beginning, and then never checks on him afterwards? Why doesn't he drop into his own bell tower a couple of times just to say hi? He says at one point, Frollo learned long ago to respect the sanctity of the church. Did he, though? Did he really? And then in the climax he says, Frollo, have you gone completely mad? What was your first clue? It really took half the city going up in flames? Seems to me Quasimodo's adoption should have gone something like this.
Even this foul creature may someday prove to be of use to me.
Okay, give me the baby. Give me the baby. My bell tower, my church, my baby. Not to keep going back to Victor Hugo's other book.
Too late.
But the bishop that appears in the prologue of Les Miserables, it just is assumed that he died of old age in between his respective prologue and present day. Why didn't we do the same thing here? The Archdeacon stands up to Frollo, and rather powerfully, I might add. But then he doesn't do it again. Was that his good deed for the next 20 years?
By the way, it occurred to me. We went this entire script without ever once mentioning Phoebus.
Oh yeah. Oh well.
But overall, this movie has its flaws, and more or less Disney didn't and still doesn't know what to do with it. As of the time of this video, there's been reports of a live-action remake coming down the pipeline. I've been incredibly lukewarm on the prospect of these things. But I have said that this one could benefit from a slightly different take. So, I'm holding out hope. Not enough that I'll be disappointed if it's mediocre or even bad.
Right.
But, I don't know, could be interesting. Still though, the animated movie is one of my favorites from their studio. It's just behind Beauty and the Beast and Fantasia and just above Bambi.
The first time I watched this movie, I noticed the comedy more than the drama. This time around, I feel like I noticed the drama more than I did the comedy. Make of that what you will. I'm gonna give this one a satisfactory.
Me too. While we're at it, go ahead and check out the cast recording of the stage show. It's worth a listen. And if you get the opportunity, go see the current production, where Quasimodo's deafness from the book is taken so seriously, he's actually played by a deaf actor who sings in ASL.
Out there, where they all live unaware.
Thank you for joining us for Faith on Film. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Stephanie. We'll see you next time.
You know, speaking of Victor Hugo, in the 2012 film version of Les Mis, Russell Crowe's Javert sings Stars from the police precinct, which is a block and some change from the Palace of Justice, where Frollo is singing Hellfire.
Excuse me, you're interrupting my justice motive so low, about my calling from on high to damn a fugitive below.
What a coincidence. I was also singing about being an agent of divine justice, wishing to see a lawbreaker burn in hell.
Perhaps we could work.
Too late. I'm already in love with you.
Choose me or your pyre. Be mine or you will burn.
What I find really interesting,
When you stack him up against the likes of McLeach or... No, that's not the line. I don't know why McLeach was the first one I went to.
I don't even know who that is.
George C. Scott.
Say a Maleficent line in your George C. Scott voice.
Quite an assemblage you have here, King Stephen. The nobility, the gentry. Oh, look, even a bit of the rabble.
Beata Maria.
You know what I find really interesting? Sorry.
Farewell, auf Wiedersehen, adieu. Goodbye, adieu, adieu. To you and you and you. The sun has gone to bed and so must I. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.